Welcome to your fourth class of the day, and hopefully this grueling routine won't get you down too badly. We'll try to keep you involved in this class and keep your interest level up. What we want to talk to you today, or talk with you today, about the future. That's what this whole meeting is about, and the role of training as it relates to your future. My name is Steve Ratzman, and I'm the manager of program development in the training department down in Raleigh. And my partner teaching this class is Dave Haeck, our training manager, departmental manager down in Raleigh. And we have a few goals for this class. We'd like for you, or we'd like to help you, develop a futuristic thought process. Well, just a little different thought process about the success of your business. We'd like you to think about your business perhaps a little differently than you have in the past, especially when it comes to some of the problems that you have in certain departments of your business. And we also want to provide you with the information so that you can take maximum advantage of the training that's offered by us, as well as the training that might be available locally. We want you to think about what some of the local sources of training might be so that you can take advantage of those. In order to support those goals, we have some training objectives, and I'm sure you've been seeing these in every class you attend. Upon completion of this class, we want you to be able to list at least 3 different types of training that's available from Deere. We want you to be able to list at least 2 local sources of employee development training. Getting to defining training needs, we want you to be able to describe or to define a performance gap. Okay? We want you to be able to define a performance gap. And in conjunction with that, we want you to be able to describe a performance gap that can be solved through training. And if we do all of those things that we just talked about, if we can meet those objectives, then we'll be able to meet our last objective, which is for you to be able to start to formulate a training strategy for your dealership. And you probably noticed in these classes, we take a look at the past, the present, and the future as it relates to the subject at hand. And a few things about the past that I've observed. One is that dealers relied on John Deere in the past as their sole source for training. We were it, pretty much. Dealers sent participants to training sessions with no course prerequisites stated by us. So that was a weakness on our part. And sometimes, even if we did state those prerequisites, they weren't always adhered to. Individual training needs, the participants, the students that came from the dealership, we really didn't analyze what their needs were at the dealership or at the company level. And hopefully this is in the distant past, but dealers used to view their service departments as necessary evils. They knew they needed to have one. Boy, it was tough to make any money there, and it would be nice if you just didn't have to have it at all. Well, we know that that's not the way it's going to be for the future. The service department needs to be profitable and needs to be one of our biggest sources of profit. Presently, well, customers are demanding higher levels of service, aren't they? They want it now. Right, Jerry? They want it now, whether it's parts, service, or sales. Customers have alternate sources for purchasing machines, parts, and service. They don't have to come to us to get their machine fixed. There's other places that they can go. And the greatest portion of dealer income today, 70%, is still from complete goods sales. So that's kind of the way we see the present. Let's take a little look at the future. Well, in the future, we see that parts sales and repair service sales, and you heard Mr. Rosvold talk about this yesterday, will be the largest dealer income source. And if they're going to be the largest dealer income source, well, then those departments have to be profitable. They have to be very profitable, because that's where the profit's going to be generated. Online training courses. Okay? There's going to be more online training courses available to you over the computer, and perhaps it's even going to go to online testing for course prerequisites. You might not be able to get into that online training course unless you've passed the prerequisite test. So those are some things that are out there in the future. And there has to be more emphasis on management training, because we said we have to make the parts and service departments more profitable than they've been, and customer satisfaction training. Our customers expect us to be profitable, or they expect us to be professional. So we have to be able to satisfy those customers. So our business is changing, stating the obvious, okay? Constant change. What types of change have you noticed in your area over the last few years? Don't be afraid to speak out. There's no wrong answers. Anybody?
Customers want instant gratification.
Yeah. They want instant reaction, instant gratification. Okay, that seems to go with society in general, doesn't it? Anything else? Your businesses. Okay. Well, yeah, customer expectations. You're right. They want instant service, instant gratification. The products are changing. Okay. There's different levels of products that we have now within the John Deere line. Entry level right on up through premium. How about the business methods, the technology? It's obvious that the computer has just changed everything. I mean, it's just changed everything. It's changed what we do on a daily basis. How many folks, think about it. How many folks had a computer in your dealership 10 years ago? Well, there's probably some. If you up the ante to 12 or 15 years ago, probably a lot of the hands would go down. Things have changed pretty quickly in that area. We can't hardly make a transaction in the dealership anymore without using the computer somehow. And you can't deal with Deere anymore if you don't have a computer. Here's a big one that we've got to figure out how to deal with. The availability and the education level of prospective employees. Depends on where you're at, but if you're in a major metropolitan area, chances are, it could be any area, but chances are it's pretty tough to find folks that are capable of working for you. Raleigh, North Carolina is a prime example of where the unemployment rate, I think, is down to about 1.5%. So just about anybody that's got a pulse is working. Okay? And that makes it pretty tough to find folks that are out there that are capable of working in our dealerships and interacting with customers. If we're fortunate enough to find one that might be capable of being developed, then we better have a plan to develop them. So that's a tough one, and that probably isn't going to get a whole lot better unless, God forbid, there's something like a big recession come along. And that wouldn't be good either. But that's how you get better prospective pool of employees. The customer mix. You notice Mr. Rosvold talked about the aging baby boomers. Well, one of them standing right in front of you, okay? And those folks are going to become more interested in landscape services as time goes on. And they're going to be employing commercial cutters to take care of their landscapes. And maybe that's going to change the mix of your customers. Perhaps you'll be dealing with more commercial cutters versus homeowners. Or maybe that segment will become more important to you. So that's another change that's out there. Competition? Uh-oh. Where'd that come from? Is it noon or something? Whew. Wow. You have no idea what that does to a presenter when something like that happens. This baby boomer just aged another 10 years. Yeah, competition. They're always throwing something into the mix, and that's something we have to deal with. Distribution channels. Everybody's real interested in that right now. The big box merchandisers are out there. They're here to stay. We have to figure out how to become profitable right along with them. Okay? Because we're not going to change the fact that they're here. So those are some of the changes that are out there, and perhaps you can think of some others. So how do you grow in a constantly changing environment? How are we going to grow? Well, we've got to change too. It's that simple. All of us, not just dealers, not just dealer employees, company folks as well. We've got to change. And what Dave and I want to work with you here today is to help you change your philosophy as it relates to training. I'm pretty heavily involved with training when it gets to your people, both sales and service. And I see two ends of the spectrum that are out there which must reflect the dealer's philosophy. One end of the spectrum is where we've got dealers that send, doesn't matter what Deere offers, they send everybody, okay, to every program that Deere has. And we appreciate your vote of confidence, but sometimes I question, is that the best use of the dealer's resources? Okay. The other end of that spectrum is where dealers don't send anybody to any training. Okay. Either they don't think it's worth it, or they don't think they can afford it, okay, or they can't afford to have that person away from the dealership. And I realize that we're dealing with a lot of smaller businesses, so taking somebody out of the dealership is a problem. But we'd encourage you not to be on either end of that spectrum. Somewhere in between is the right place to be, depending upon the training needs of your employees. And that's what we're about. We want you to analyze those needs and then pick the right training for those folks. Here's something I picked up out of the Raleigh News and Observer back in June. I think it's a little bit interesting. 25% of the Fortune 1000 businesses in 1985 were no longer on that list in 1995. Think about that. So 250 businesses that were on that list in 85 were no longer on that list in 95. We don't know what happened to them. I mean, well, they could have been bought up. That's exactly right, Ken. There was a lot of buyouts, weren't there? What happened to technology between 85 and 95? Yeah, it really took off. Okay, that was probably the quantum leap that was out there, and that really changed a lot of businesses. And, you know, some probably went out of businesses, some got smaller, and some of the technology companies got bigger. But if you think about the folks that aren't on that list any longer, the only conclusion you can come to that's a safe one is that they didn't grow with the changes to their business environment. And that's what we want to help you folks do, is to help you develop the right attitude so that you can grow with the changes to your business environment. And the fact that you're here indicates that you're interested in doing that. Again, Mr. Roswald talked about this in his opening remarks, the fact that in 1995 there were about 25,000 dealers. And in the year 2010, they expect, and when I say they, this is not John Deere speaking, this was the Yard and Garden magazine who did some industry surveys on similar industries to ours, agricultural and trucking. They expect that in 2010 there's going to be about 13,000 dealers. So, you know, you can look at that and you can get quite concerned, or you can look at that and take it as a challenge. So if you're not willing to change, your business isn't going to survive into the next millennium. But I'd like to think that all of you folks, again, because you're here, are interested in changing and interested in surviving into the next millennium. So in order to do that, one of the things that we need to do is to determine the training needs of our people. So how are we going to do that? Well, it gets back to one of our objectives. We talked about we've got to analyze what some of the performance gaps within our businesses are. So this is the definition of a performance gap. And it's written in your book there. The difference between required job performance and actual job performance is a performance gap. That's it, plain and simple. Example, if in your parts department you expect, or your target is an 80% stock order ratio, and you're at a 50% stock order ratio, well then the performance gap is at 30% that you're not getting. Okay? That's all it means. Now whether it's a training issue, that's a whole other situation. Service department, your billing efficiency. If your target's 80% for billing efficiency and you're about average and you've got about 50 or 40, well the difference again is the performance gap. How we're going to address that performance gap, again, we haven't figured out yet, but we've got to identify it. What departments in your dealership have the most pressing performance gaps? Anybody? Want to bare their soul? What's that? Service is tough, isn't it, Ken? It really is. Because service is a tough one to manage because, you know, your inventory is fleeting. Every hour that clicks by, if you don't sell it, you aren't going to sell it. You lost it. That's exactly right. Parts is a tough one, too.
It would be a lot better if you were selling items that were $500 or $1,000 and above. But when you're selling items of $100, a person brings it back, and you got a $30 or $40 repair bill.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, right. And yeah, you have to make some tough decisions on those, and the customer does too. But if you think about your departments that have the most pressing performance gaps, then think about this one. What departments in your dealerships have the most pressing training needs? Whatever performance gap you're thinking about in your business, can it be solved by training? Maybe it can, and maybe it's not a training issue. So how do you determine, is it a training issue or isn't it? Okay, well, here's another definition for you that we'd like you to internalize, and then you'll be able to think this thing through as you get home. Which performance gaps can training solve? Only the ones that are caused by a lack of knowledge or a lack of skill. Okay? If the person lacks the knowledge to do the job or lacks the skill to do the job, then training can do something about it. If something else is the problem, training isn't the answer. My phaser's not working too good here. What might be some examples of something else?
Don't have the right tools.
Okay. Mr. Service Trainer over here says we might not have the right tools, and that's exactly right. That's one. Yeah, I can train them all day long, right, Bob? And if we don't have the right tools when they get home, that's not going to change a whole lot. Sir? Attitudes. You bet. Employee attitudes. We can't train those away. Can't train those away. And sometimes they'll show up in service school, too. Yes, sir.
Management attitudes.
Management attitudes.
You have to realize you're part of that.
That's right.
20 years you have driven us to sell whole goods and look at whole goods as a priority.
Right. There's no question about that, Jerry. There's no question. And like I said, we all have to change, don't we? Yeah. You're right. Change has got to come from all over. We've got to shift our priorities into the parts and service area.
And most of the training that we've had from you in 20 years has been driven by whole goods, to sell more whole goods.
Exactly. There's no argument from this boy. None at all. Well, let's take a look at some of these issues, okay, or examples of what something else might be. Perhaps the employee might lack the capacity to do the job. Okay. No matter, God bless them, but no matter how much we try to work with them, it isn't going to change. Does that employee know the standards to measure the job? Have they been established? Does your parts manager know that you expect an 80% stock order ratio? Does your service manager know that you expect an 80% billing efficiency? Feedback. Do those people have the information? Do they know what their stock order ratio is? Do they know what their service billing efficiency is today? Are we providing them feedback in the form of performance appraisals? Okay. When it gets down to all of the people in the dealership, are we conducting performance appraisals? Because that is a great way to find out what the training needs are if you sit down one-on-one and talk with your people. We talked about attitudes, and I talk with a lot of your people in service school and a lot of your salespeople at BTL. And the biggest complaint you get from dealer employees is lack of communication. They just don't know what's going on in the dealership. They don't necessarily suspect anything bad's going on. They just don't know what's going on, and that really leads to attitude problems. But if you have performance appraisals, you can nip that in the bud. Working conditions. Bob talked about tools and equipment and the incentives to perform well. I thought Jack Roush had some interesting incentives that he put out there to try to get his employees to help everybody. Doesn't matter what manager comes to me and needs something, I'm going to help him because he might vote for me. Well, I realize that your dealerships aren't the size of business that he has, but still, there's got to be a lesson there that we can learn. As far as incentives go, what incentive does your technician have to do the job right the first time? Are you paying that technician to do the rework? If he has to rework that thing and it was his fault, is he still getting paid for those hours to rework it? Just like he got paid the first time? I'm not saying he shouldn't, I just need you to think about it, okay, so that we can develop the incentives. Okay, so let's take a look at what the training programs that are available from Deere currently. Under the, you can break them down into sales training, service, and then the last two bullets that we put up there are relatively new endeavors, and that's business management training and parts and service management training. Those are conducted by the Dealer Development Department, Joy Esser and his group, and we've got to get the profitability of these departments up. Okay? all the departments in the dealership. So let's drill down a little bit on each of these. In the area of sales training, perhaps most of you are familiar with Deere camp meetings that are going to be held pretty soon. I think they'll start probably in February, where we take your sales folks together, pump them up a little bit before the sales season, give them product information, competitive information on lawn and garden and commercial products. Product introductions, Cut Across America is a good example of that, where we bring your folks together regionally and train them on the new products as well as competition. Beyond the Limits down in Florida has been down there for about 4 or 5 years now, and that's been a very successful commercial training program for us, where we've actually been able to get the commercial salespeople hands-on on the equipment out in the field, and the competitive equipment as well. It's been very successful for us. And the last one down there is, again, this goes back to Joy Esser's group, Dealer Development, where we've actually taken some salespeople now and working with them to help them analyze their sales territory, track their customers, develop the market potential, and also give them some insight, financial insight, into what the impact of margins are onto your business, okay? So that they can understand the impact of them getting a good margin on the deal or maybe not getting such a good margin on the deal. So that's where we're going with sales training. Oh, this is just a shot of some scenes from BTL where you can see we've got competitive equipment, and that's the part that the salespeople really seem to learn the most from or get the most confidence from when they can operate that competitive equipment in addition to the John Deere equipment. We've been tracking BTL for quite a while, and it's one that we do have some information on, and it's measurable. We found that over the years, the dealers that have attended BTL have increased their sales on average 25% over those dealers that haven't attended. And that's, of course, in the area of commercial products. Service training, right now, they're in the final stages of finishing the service update video program, which will be mailed to you folks in January. It will include a video as well as a workbook for your technicians so that they can train themselves at their convenience. There are service update schools which will be held on the territory. I believe they're going to be starting in mid-February, and the area managers of product support will be bringing them to you as locally as possible on the territories. And right now we're in the process. System Diagnostic School is going on. That's a 2-day diagnostic school, both on electrical and hydraulic training, and that's been going throughout the country. It started in Raleigh, went to Atlanta, Columbus, and I believe it's in Davenport, Iowa right now as we speak. And that involves classroom activity as well as activities right on the machines where we can actually do the hydraulic and the electrical diagnostic procedures. In the area of business management training, there are 3 different seminars. Well, there's 4 if you count the salesman seminar, but the dealer management seminar and parts and service manager seminar. The theory here, folks, is that we're going to try to get the dealer into the first one, the dealer principal, and go through all of the financial statements, study the ratios so the dealer can understand the financial impact of what's going on in each department, and then bring, if he buys off, if the dealer principal buys off on this, then if he sends his parts manager and service manager to these sessions, well then they can all work together as a team to improve the profitability of the parts and the service department and the whole dealership. Parts training, there's sales seminars that go on periodically, parts merchandising classes, and right now you're at the biggest parts training event that we're going to have all year long. And you'll be subject to parts training all day today. So what are some of the local sources that you might have in your area for employee development? Has anybody used any local sources? Say again? Community college? Okay. Yeah, that's one that we need. Everybody's got one of those, but let's take a look at some of them that are out there. And you know, you don't even have to go out the front door of the dealership to realize that there's some training that's embedded right in your computer right now. An example that comes to my mind is some of these online programs that we have. Right now, your technicians and your service department has the ability to go right into DTAC as on the web And the reason I bring that up is because it's also a training program. The instructions are embedded right in that program. So not only is it a diagnostic tool, but it's a training program as well. So use that diagnostic tool. Suppliers. Think about this. The example that I use is about 12 years ago in Columbus, they changed our whole phone system in the branch. You can imagine the havoc that that caused and the panic. Well, the supplier came in and trained us. Not only did they train us in how to use the phone and how to forward the calls and all that other stuff that you can do with these phones, but they also gave us a good training, excellent training, on telephone techniques. Okay, they trained all of our people on how to sound professional on the phone, how to answer the phone, you know, how many rings before you pick it up and all that stuff. And we could see an immediate impact on how we provided phone service to the dealers. It was dramatic. Dale Carnegie courses, those are out there for our people to develop confidence in their presentation and working one-on-one with customers. Local community colleges you folks talked about. And some of the things that we need out of those local community colleges, everybody in the dealership now, or at least almost everybody, needs to be able to navigate through the internet. Okay? And if they don't have that skill or knowledge, perhaps they can learn that general training right there. Customer relations courses. We have to be professional. We have to know how to deal with customers. Everybody in the dealership. All it takes is one person to upset a customer. And it doesn't matter which department they're in. Basic service training. Perhaps you have a young person that's working in your dealership that is showing some potential. Maybe he's just doing odd jobs. You could send him to the local community college. Perhaps they have a small engines repair course, and put some training into them that way and see if they develop the capability before you send them to us for advanced service training. And your dealership. Your dealership is probably the most underused, and I say that cautiously, but the reason I say that is, think about this. When you get home from this meeting, what is your plan for taking this information to the rest of the people in your dealership that need this information? I just want you to think about that. Do your folks, do your service technicians, when they go to service school, do they have the opportunity to bring the information to the other service technicians in your shop, to conduct a little one-on-one training with what they've learned? Think about that, because that's a very powerful way to upgrade your people, both those that are doing the training as well as those that are receiving. What else can you do? Well, I would really encourage everybody, all dealers, to form alliances with your local high schools, your technical schools, and your community colleges. Find out who's in charge of the programs up there. And if you got an engine or something that has been replaced for whatever reason, and it hasn't been called back by the factory, donate it to their program so that they can use it for tear down or whatever they're going to use it for study, because we throw away better components every day than they have to train with. Okay, they're still using a lot of older stuff. Offer employment to their students. If you do that, eventually you'll get a line on some of their better students. And consider serving on their advisory councils. And the reason that I say this is I've had so many dealers say, Steve, I'm not interested in that local school, the local ag school or community college. They don't teach these kids anything that they need to work in our industry. Well, that may be true, but if we don't sit on their advisory councils and give them some guidance as to what we need as employers, then maybe it's partly our fault. Okay? So think about that. The next topic we'd like to talk with you about, Dave is going to come up here and show you what the training calendar on the internet is going to look like. And the reason we're doing this, or one of the reasons, is so that you folks can understand what's going to be offered all the time.
Thank you, Steve. I guess a couple questions come to mind. First of all, why a training calendar? Any idea, Jerry? Right. Real important. Because as Steve was running through his list of classes, is there anybody, maybe by show of hands, that heard a class that you didn't know about? Raise your hand. This group knew about all the classes. That's good. When we do surveys, we ask dealers, a lot of times they say, I didn't know there was that class, or they find out about it afterwards. Another thing we ask them is, how do you decide which classes are most important? Well, if you don't know all the classes, you obviously don't know which one is the most important. The other thing that Steve mentioned is the fact that the number of dealers will be decreasing. And we see that within this room even. The John Deere dealers within this room carry more John Deere contracts than they carried in the past. You're not only a lawn and garden dealer, you're a commercial dealer. Many of you are worksite products dealers and golf and turf dealers. And very honestly, we're not working as good together as a company as we should be. We're not communicating, so if we're not communicating with one another, how could you possibly know when our training sessions are? Unfortunately, we found times that we've got 2 training sessions going on in the same month or the same week at different locations. Training calendar will help us do that. The other thing it'll help us do is it'll help us plan farther into the future. It'll force us to plan. When we finish one BTL, it'll force us to set the dates for the next one. And that's important that you know, so you can plan your vacations, you can plan your involvement, and that's the reason why we want to have this training calendar available. Putting it on the internet. The reason for doing it is to make it easily updatable. The problem with printing off a training calendar, even if we can get everybody to get the information together at one time, we print it off, the day we print it off, the next day it's obsolete. So we'll put it on the internet, we'll be able to update it every day. If you have changes or we have changes in it, we'll be able to make those changes daily. So that's the reason for the training calendar, and that's the reason for the internet. I thought we would have this training calendar available. Matter of fact, my goal was to have it here for you. It's not here. I'm going to show you a mock-up of what it's going to look like. We've run into some concerns with Y2K, and that's take precedent. You know, a lot of things get blamed on Y2K. It's happened with us. We've gone to an outside vendor. We've developed the program. You're going to see some of the data in the program. It's not the actual data, I'll tell you that, because they just took information and put it all to give us a facsimile of what it's going to look like. But we've got a problem getting it up into the Deere host system now. It'll take us probably another 2 months. So I'm hoping by the month of February you'll actually be able to go online, and what you'll do is you'll click onto the Pathways page, and let me show you what the mock-up is going to look like. This is version 1.0, so by the time you see it, it'll probably be about 3.5. So we've got a lot of changes to make in it yet. So that's the reason I want to show it to you now to get possible suggestions that you might have. When you're in an internet application, when there's anything underlined, you can click on it and get additional information. So in this particular case, we've got a 3-month or a 12-month calendar, and I'm going to click on the 3-month, so I'll show you what that'll look like. But you're also able to get a single month if you go into either the 3-month or the 12-month. You can also sort by product group, course type, and course title. Let's say you know you've been to BTL in the past, you want to go to BTL again, you'd click on BTL, it would take you to the entire listing of what's available for BTL for the next 12 months. If you knew the course type, maybe you want to go in and get some dealer development training. And you wonder where Joy's classes are being taught and when they're being taught. You would just check on dealer development and you'd go strictly to those classes. We have the default set for all so that you will get all the training at one time. But if you will click on any of these down below, it will take the all button off, and that's the only one you'll see. As an example, if you're only a golf and turf dealer, you don't want to see all our training, you would just click on golf and turf training. So that's our thought of how you would get to the basic description. Let's go ahead now and I'll show you a 3-month overview. It would be like you'd click on a 3-month overview. This is what you'd see. October, November, December. Again, don't hold me to the information that's in here. The supplier hasn't validated it. He's just trying to fill in the boxes just to give us an idea what it's going to look like. But hopefully you can see if you've been in Pathways, it's the same standardized format for all of Pathways. So if you were looking at the month of December and the dates of the 17th to the 23rd, you wanted to look at the BTL training, all you'd have to do is click on the BTL training, and if you clicked on that, you'd get a description of what the course is going to look like. It would give you the course number, the type of training, it would give you what's being involved in the training, and also any electives that are a part of the training. You say, okay, I'm interested, I think I'd like to sign up for this. So go ahead and click the sign up button. If you click that button, you'd see a screen that looks like this. And this is going to be similar to all the sign-ups for any registration that's going to be in Pathways. Everything that has an asterisk on it is going to be required. And we've found that we've spent a lot of time, our effort and our time, and your effort and your time, getting the correct information that we need. One of the things you always ask about is, why do you need a Social Security number? The reason we need that is we load that by that individual number to the individual that's taken the course. And that'll travel with you anywhere you go within any John Deere systems. That's the reason we need it. The nice thing about doing it on the computer, the same form will be for dealers, it'll be for employees. Down in the lower right-hand corner, if you click on that, you can see there's more information down below. So there's more than one page of information. You can look at the hotel information. That box will always be there. If there's no information in it, that means it doesn't require an overnight stay. Travel information, where to go, where the location actually is, and any additional information. Contact person, phone numbers, maps on how to get there. We can put that all in this one registration form. So you completed all the boxes and you got all the asterisks covered. You say, okay, now I want to go ahead and process my registration. When you process the registration, this is the page that you'd see. The box would have the information in it as to what the course content is. It'll have an email address for who the contact is, a course number, and a session number, and also confirm all the particulars of the class. We'd suggest at this point, then, that you go ahead and print that. Keep that for your record. If you've got any more questions about the course, you'll be able to contact us through email, through a phone call, and give us the information on what the course is and the session is. Now, I want to tell you right up front, this is your registration to go into the course. At this point, I still can't guarantee the course. Because what we're coming with as a company, we're coming with different legacy systems to change our entire corporate information systems. And we're going to be coming with a different system that this will be compatible with, SAP, that to date, I can't give you the automatic, yes, you're in the class, give you the confirmation, give you the map. That's going to be coming down the road. That'll be part of one of the future updates that we put to this training calendar. But our thought is we've got the training calendar started. We wanted to get you the information as soon as possible as to where the courses were at, what the courses were like, and get you to register this way online. Now the question is, will we handle it other ways? Yeah, we probably still will to begin with. We'll probably still do hard copies. We'll probably still send emails. But the thought is, long term, this is probably the direction I'm going to go. And I guess I need your input. Do you think this is going the right direction? Okay? Thank you. As soon as we can get it for you, we'll get it online and we'll give you an announcement for it. And our goal is to have all the divisions within the CCE division working together on this so that you could go to one place and find everything. Okay. Let me change for just a minute and let me ask you what additional training we could offer that we presently don't offer today. We've asked that of each of the classes today. We'd like to ask that of you also. What could we add to our training curriculum that you would suggest that would benefit you as a dealer organization? Any ideas? Jerry? Right. More dealer development that Joey's doing, maybe? Right. We're in the process of that.
I'm not sure exactly what type, and maybe that comes back to the dealership. With everything changing so much, maybe we need some training, just basic training for employees about, you know, where all this is going.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that we're ready because I'm not sure I know where it's going.
Right. Are you talking about information systems training?
Information systems, this business,
Right.
the business that they're in, you know. I mean, they're as concerned as we are as they see dealerships closing. You know, are you going to be here? Is my job going to be here?
Oh, we have those same concerns too. We're in this together. That's the reason we're talking about it right now. Right, I hear you. I know exactly what you're saying.
That probably could be done over, you know.
Customer satisfaction, it was one of the suggested in one of the earlier classes. Is that something that would benefit you? Some CIS training? How to deal not only with problem customers, just with everyday customers. Another suggestion we had was just information system training. As a company, we're heading more and more towards information system training, and you need to do it within your dealership, and you don't have the personnel a lot of times to do it.
I think in general, and I'm included, is most of the dealers just are not computer literate where we need to be.
Right. We usually put help screens, but you probably just need some basic training, even beyond help screens.
Basic, localized type training.
Okay. Good.
I still think we need more service training.
More service training of what type? Diagnostic? See some people shaking their heads.
And some basics. I mean, right now,
Some basics.
from what I understand from my guys that come back, they basically look at electric and hydraulic training more or less on 400 series. What about some more basic training?
Okay. We'll get that down too, Steve. Go ahead.
Well, the system must be, in my opinion, in a position to tell you the number of participants.
Right.
This is because when you go to the hands-on section, if you have a larger classroom, it would be very difficult to pass across the information they need to know.
Okay. So you need to know class sizes to have a better anticipation of what's going to be covered. Okay. That's a good point.
I think we need to watch that we don't expand those class sizes too hard.
Right. Right.
Or you lose the value.
Yeah, and if we do get more registrations, we don't need to turn the people away. We need to try to add another class. Do it simultaneous. We'll try and do that.
And I think the service classes need to be earlier in the year. I can't send people in the middle of April.
Okay.
In April. They need to be earlier.
We've just been discussing that here in the recent weeks. March 31st, the deadline?
I'd say March 15th.
March 15th, okay. Yeah, it probably depends on the part of the country. Maybe it's March 1st. Yep, depends on where you're at. Okay, I'm running out of time. Let's real quick run by the objectives that Steve asked you initially. Let's see if he did a good job in teaching those to you. 3 types of training currently offered by John Deere. There actually are 4. Can you tell me them? Pardon? Sales training, parts training, service training, right, business management training. Thanks, Heinz. List 2 local sources of employee training. Other than Deere, how can you pick up employee training locally? Community college, other suppliers, and web, online training, right. Define a performance gap. And Steve gave you a classic definition of a performance gap. What is it?
The difference of what you're doing and what you should be doing.
Right. Difference of what should happen to what the actual is. That's the difference. Okay, and what kind of a performance gap can training address? Lack of knowledge or lack of skills. The classic way of addressing that is if you said it's a matter of life and death, Jerry, can you do this? And if he couldn't do it, then it's beyond something you could train him of. That's the classic measure.
I think the important thing on the performance gap is I'm not sure if you went through all of our dealerships and talked to, I know we don't have any time to talk to the people, I'm not sure if, I don't think they even know that there's a performance gap.
No. That's the problem. It's the feedback. You've got to let them know what your expectations are so they can accomplish it. Okay, for a dealership strategy, assess the performance gap. When you know what the performance gap is, it is a gap that can be handled by training. Is it a lack of skill or knowledge? If it is, then let's look at pathways and let's find out whether it's available from Deere. Another possibility is you've got to do a performance appraisal. We at Deere do it in writing once a year, but we do it daily. And I'd suggest you do the same thing with your employees. And probably the most important thing is develop those local partnerships. In the past, you looked at us as being the only source. Actually, we got to work on it together. It's a project that the local community colleges, the Dale Carnegies, the high school VOAG departments, they can all help us. Okay, we're out of time. Thanks a lot for your participation in the class. Thank you.